This is an Isle of Man Arts Society special appetizer for a talk I will be giving in July 2021, which will be on 1950 Britain through the eyes of Picture Post. You do not have to be a member to enjoy this appetizer, but if you do and would like to join, membership details are at the end of this 15-minute presentation. So, pen and paper at the ready. Picture Post was the extraordinary photojournalism magazine from the mid-1930s to the late 1950s, which sold 2 million copies a week. This talk is a nostalgic look through its articles of everyday life in the 1950s, when we were suffering from real austerity, and how the Festival of Britain was to be a tonic to the nation. Now for the appetizer. My name is Howard Smith, and I am an accredited Art Society lecturer, and as you will see from this short talk, how much the Isle of Man means to me. When I came to your island in 2019, it was the first time for 65 years to fulfill the one item on my bucket list. This short talk is an edited extract from my family history video and how my family over a century ago found this treasure of an island. I hope you will find it interesting. The only item on my bucket list was to walk to and climb the Milner Tower, which dominates Port Erin and the surrounding area. It was quite a task 65 years ago to walk along the cliff path to the tower, and I felt the same claustrophobia I had those years ago as I broached the entrance. Strangely, the only difference I remembered was the absence of other people, one of the penalties of being a much visited attraction in the 50s. At the top, I was back to my childhood, conquering a remote castle and surveying all around. It was just as mesmerizing. Once again, I was on top of the world with one of the most picturesque views I have ever seen in a lifetime of travel. So, how did I get there? My father's sister left a treasure trove of pictures. This one, about 1908, shows a group on the steps of an unknown hotel in Port Erin, and on the left-hand side are my grandparents. My grandfather was born in Derbyshire and became chief engineer at Arthur Guinness in Dublin. I have religiously visited every pub I can to test the quality of the brew ever since. My father and siblings were all born in Dublin, and as I discovered through the photographs, holidayed in Port Erin. From 1925, this photograph is at the Carlton boarding house, with my Aunt Rosalind, with a friend sitting at the entrance. It was she who collected and referenced the photo album. I spent many hours researching photos of the promenade to find out what happened to the Carlton. And I eventually found this 1930 postcard with the clue Spaldrick. And on enlarging the picture you can read boarding house over the entrance, matching the 1925 photo. I subsequently discovered this was opposite the entrance to Bradder Glen, and today the building still stands, but is converted into apartments. Other entries were much more recognisable. The swimming baths, aka the Lido, or the swimming pool. I'll come back to this later on. But what about this? Charabancs could be hard for visits around the island, and there's my aunt arrowed. Wasn't this just a splendid way to visit the island? There appears to be a castellated wall in the background. Any ideas where the photograph was taken? Also, these two photographs were the one on the right with my father on the bench, far right, with his older brother Fred and sister Rosalind. Do you know where this is? Again, does anyone recognise the tower on the left? All of these were in the Port Erin section of the album. I suspect that they came to the island many times from Dublin before he left, having graduated from Trinity College Dublin to live in England around 1935. My father then got married in 1940 and I turned up during the war. My mother died from the complications of an ectopic pregnancy and my father was left looking after me. A hopeless task. He returned to the island in 1948 and was a competitor in the junior TT races with his Velocet. The results show the ominous R after J for junior, which meant retired. Well, not exactly true, as he told me he fell off at the Ramsey hairpin. So did the R stand for that as well? In the early 1950s, over 3 years, the two of us took to coming to Port Erin and meeting up with my Irish cousins. He sneakily met and married a Scottish lass in the mid-1950s, and we ceased coming to the island. No photographs survived as he destroyed most of them before his death. But I found this original masterpiece. A stunning, simple sketch by a little-known artist of a boy playing football at Port Erin. Must be worth a fortune. It comes with a glowing provenance, but I bet Michelangelo never had one of these. I also managed to find a slide missed from his purge, with this view from the harbour taken on early colour film. The promenade shows a full frontage of hotels in this thriving holiday resort. An earlier postcard shows the names of the hotels. This has been put in especially for your chairman. I remember so clearly the photographers who hounded and snapped visitors in the area of the promenade, and the next day you could see their results in the display frames lining the road. That's if you could get through the crowds checking them. In 2019, I took a photograph from the same position. Looks pretty similar, but only the cars have changed. Oh, and there are holes where some of the hotels were. The opening up of foreign travel resulted in the demise of many of them. Perched up on the north side of the bay, looking towards the harbour, was a prominent white 1930s hotel. Originally, it was just a single guest house extended in the 1930s on the edge of the Bradda golf course to accommodate 100 guests over 3 floors. This ad from the 1950s proudly boasts hot and cold running water in every bedroom. Oh dear, am I too literal? All the hotels had the same problem, I gather. When I went there, it was a magical, white and clean hotel. I tried to find out about the hotel before returning in 2019, hoping beyond hope it was still a hotel and we could stay there. But there was no trace of it whatsoever. Even when we got to Port Erin, mention drew blank faces. So when we walked to where I thought it was, we found it derelict. I subsequently found it had been renamed as the Spaldrick Hotel, which is why I was being blanked. But somehow it still had the majesty about it, and my wife photographed me at the front door. I stumbled against it and found it was open. I entered and was transformed back 65 years, remembering everything about the hotel. There was the kiosk in which Mr. or Mrs. Quayle, who managed the hotel, sat collecting and handing out keys. The hotel was frequented by many Scottish golfers who played at the remaining Rowney golf course over the road from the hotel. My father would always have a witty retort when he met them. "Tell me," he said, "when you get into a bunker, do you have to use a spade to dig the ball out?" To which the Scottish golfer replied. "Och, no, no, no. The speed went out about 20 years ago. We now use the mash in Niblick." Looking back from the kiosk was the sunshine door, the perfect welcome to many 30s hotels, and stained glass. I remembered the tiled entrance floor, which had survived quite well, as had the stained glass. I was back to being a small boy again, and crystal clear memories flooded back. I ushered my wife into the room on the left, which was the ballroom. Built in the 1930s, this was unchanged from when I was there. Then there was dancing every night to a radiogram, and on special occasions, a live band. Dancing was a popular pastime that everyone learnt and supposedly enjoyed. Sadly, by 2019, it had seen better days. All the original features were there: the coving, the band area, the sprung floor, the grand views with the exquisite stained glass. Mercifully, by 1950, dancing had dropped to one night a week, Fridays. And what an embarrassment it was to a lad who couldn't dance. Oh, cringe. The only photographs I have were taken by a roving opportunist photographer. You can see I was on holiday, as like every male at Port Erin, I wore my best clothes, actually school uniform, without a tie. Oh, what freedom! At the bottom of the hotel grounds was the Bradda Glen, with a hut used for dancing and talent contests. Something different every day. I enjoyed the tennis courts there. The hut has gone and been modernised, but I found the entrance to Bradda Glen is still unchanged. Bradda Glen was owned by Collinsons, who had the spectacular cafe, also with dancing on the road above Spaldwick Bay. Their empire extended to cafes in Douglas. Bradda Glen featured holiday accommodation with communal areas, but a separate hostel for the ladies, with exceptional views of Port Erin, and very reasonable prices, 8 shillings per person per night. I have a record of going to a variety show in Douglas, but no further details. But I do remember that dancing again was featured at the Villa Marina, with bands like Joe Loss, and one which has always intrigued me, Ivy Benson and her all-girl band. Back to Port Erin, which was in many ways the antithesis of Douglas. At the swimming pool, I'm not going to try and pronounce it as I will almost certainly get it wrong, the seawater was constantly refreshed daily with a pump capable of 520 gallons a minute. But the biggest attraction was that mixed bathing was allowed. This rescued picture shows the pool, nestled in the cliffs below Collinsons. The attractions were numerous, with swimming galas and bathing beauty contests. I learned to swim there. I do recall it being a bit slippy-slidey though. Today it is still there, well, only just, still showing what a fabulous attraction it had been from the beginning to after the middle of the 20th century. Finally, back to the Bradda Hotel. The dining room was very much separate tables, and the meal times inflexible. Breakfast was at 9 a.m, but if you were a Scottish golfer, early breakfast would be 8 a.m. As we were there mainly to watch the TT races, it was impractical to come back for lunch, so we had a takeaway lunch bag. Oh, the excitement to see what variation there was of egg and cress or cheese and pickle or ham sandwiches with a Kit Kat. It didn't really matter, as we never noticed while bikes roared past. We concentrated mainly on the stretch between Crosby, Union Mills, Quarterbridge and the grandstand, where my father had unlimited access. He was track surgeon for Silverstone by then. The excitement was palpable, but the most enduring memory I have to this day is the smell of Castrol burning its way past us. Oh, if only they had made an aftershave. In July, there will be a talk on 1950 Britain through the eyes of Picture Post, a photojournalism magazine. The photography was exceptional, capturing perfectly life as it was in this very austere period. There was a very strong need for reform, and the talk looked at the politics, how we lived, how we entertained ourselves, how we played, and how we holidayed. To aid the recovering nation, the editor of News Chronicle came up with the idea of a Festival of Britain, which was supposed to be a tonic for the nation, for the arts, business and tourism. Details of this lecture will be sent to members. I've been asked to remind you to renew your membership, or if you're not a member and would like to join, please email us for details at the arcsociom@gmail.com and we will send you our application form. Thank you for watching this short presentation.